Hey, and good afternoon, everyone. We are a week out from Christmas, so hopefully everyone is enjoying their holiday season. Okay, so today I am starting to do some lives, and these are all going to be wrapped around various different topics that my runners who come to me who have issues, and then we wind up resolving them. We want to kind of dive a little deeper into certain types of problems. So today's topic is really all about upper body. So, how is it that your upper body can help in preventing injury free or creating injury free running? So, today we're going to kind of dive a little bit further into that. So, to all my new members, to all my new subscribers, welcome. And I hope you are enjoying a lot of the content that is here on this channel. Do let me know where you're coming from, what you're looking for in terms of goals, any topic ideas that you guys have, because I'm happy to create some content around them. All right. So I am super excited to talk about something that might surprise you: how strengthening your upper body can transform your running performance and keep you injury free. So, we have a lot to cover in this segment today. But, first question I have for you guys is, how many of you are incorporating upper body strength into your training, into your running routine? I think it's one of those things that we don't. So, I think I see this a lot on social media. A lot of runners talk about, I run with my legs, so why should I have to train my upper body? So there's a couple of concepts we want to really dive into to really have some understanding here. So the reality, upper body is a the reality is that running is a full body activity, okay? And this is something I do address in a lot of my videos when I talk about how running is a single leg sport, how we want to make sure our body is conditioned appropriately. So, we're going to dive into this a little bit more. So, just remember something: every stride involves coordinated movement from head to toe. Your upper body provides the counterbalance and stability and power transfer that makes efficient running possible. So, think about it this way: when you run, your right arm swings forward and your left leg drives forward. This reciprocal arm swing just isn't just along for the ride, it's actively contributing to the momentum, the balance, and efficiency. So, without adequate upper body strength, you're essentially running with one hand tied behind your back. And I actually encourage you kind of just try that a little bit, not at a high pace on a treadmill, but do kind of challenge yourself a little bit here with some of these examples and kind of just see what you notice with your mechanics and things like that. So before we can really kind of dive into this topic, we need to understand a few kind of anatomy, musculatures that do really play a key role in this concept of why we would want to strengthen our upper body to really enhance and, if not, get us that PR we're looking for when we're running. So, the first thing is we want to look at our core musculature. So when a lot of people hear core, they assume it's like, well, if I see somebody has a six pack or a 12 pack, they must have a strong core. Okay, well, that's not really necessarily true, FYI. But also just understand your core isn't just made up of your rectus abdominis, which is that six pack that you physically see, but it's made up of your obliques. You have an internal and external, your transverse abdominis, which is actually known as your deep stabilizer. So if we were to remove the rectus abdominis muscle, you would see the transverse abdominis underneath, which essentially does kind of create like an ace bandage around the whole trunk of your body because it is primarily the main core muscle. Then we have our erector spinae. So if when you take a shower, you look at your body from behind and you see these musculatures, running up and down along the spine. Those are known as your erector muscles. So, essentially they keep us upright. And then your multifidus. So these guys you don't see with the naked eye because they attach very deep. And these are the back stabilizers. So they attach to the lumbar spine itself. So you have to understand that the core is the bridge between the upper and the lower body. So a weak core is like having a loose hinge on a door where everything becomes inefficient and wobbly. And this is why I think a lot of times you hear people talk about how, if they're experiencing an injury, all they did was like start strengthening their core and then the injury went away. That's true and false at the same time because there are a few other things we do have to look at with that. But the core is a main component that we want to take a look at in order to have really effective running, especially when it comes to strength training the upper body. Now, the other is the shoulder complex. Now, in some of my other videos on the channel, I do talk about how to have really good arm swing by loosening up essentially the scapula, which is known as your shoulder blade, and really allowing for better movement there. There are some muscles that we want to work on around the shoulder. So it's not just the ball and socket joint that we see, up at the upper arm, where we would see our deltoids, both front, middle, and rear, and then the rotator cuff muscles, but it's also understanding about our traps and our rhomboids, which really help in maintaining that nice upright posture and also allowing for the better arm control to happen when we're swinging those arms. Now, the back musculature, this involves your lats. Your lats do come off your scapula, the most inferior part, and then attached to the top part of your pelvis. So this is this is why I talk a lot with my runners about focusing on the depression of the shoulder blades, and especially also to encouraging some lat engagement exercises to allow for less tension to be put into the QL. When some people talk about getting low back discomfort or pain due to running, they might mention some tightness around the QL. So you do want to focus in more on the lats. Excuse me, and then also to the traps and the rhomboids again, and then also to the musculature that involves the posture muscles. So addressing the erector spinae. So this is where you could see kind of doing some more extension exercises as well could be very beneficial here. So understand that your back muscles maintain posture integrity and prevent you from collapsing forward, because that's when the fatigue sets in. So if you're doing your marathon and you're getting like to mile 18 and you're all of a sudden you're feeling like you're kind of hinging more forward and everything is kind of just fatiguing out, the pain is starting to set in, a lot of times it's because you can't keep this upright posture, the core is now weakening, and it's putting undue stress into various lower limbs, specifically like the knees, the shins, the Achilles, and so forth. The other kind of key player here when it comes to anatomy is really looking at the chest and the arms. So this is the pectorals. So this is obviously, the front part of our body, the biceps and the triceps, and then the forearms. So the extensors and the flexors. And you kind of might be going, well, how did those play in? Because again, I can kind of understand the relationship between the shoulder blade, the shoulder girdle, the shoulder in general, my neck, but not really the forearms. But we're going to get into that a little bit further. But just understand that these muscles drive the arm swing. So they help maintain the rhythm and especially during hard effort. So if you've ever, had to work against wind or a severe incline, especially if you're doing a run that requires a lot of elevation gain or descent, you might be noticing how these other muscles kind of play in just a little bit. Now, the other thing is, and I talk about this a lot throughout almost every single video here on the channel, where I really do talk about more about the kinetic change. So this is really understanding how one thing affects the other. So just understand your body functions as an integrated system. So when your right foot strikes the ground, force travels up through the ankle, the knee, the hip, and then transfers to the core, and it stabilizes the opposite shoulder and arm. So if there's any weakness anywhere in this chain, it's going to compromise the entire system, which is going to obviously create an issue, where you're looking at not succeeding where you had hoped. Now, with that being said, we can look at almost, about, I would say, 5 common injuries where if you neglect strengthening your upper body, you may notice these injuries. Now, this is generalized. This is not saying that these would happen, but this is general information. So one is low back pain. So why does this happen? Well, a weak core and back muscles means that you can't stabilize your spine during repetitive impacts of running. So your lumbar just winds up taking on this absorbing like compressional force where you're all of a sudden just feeling that impact, and then it's having a lot more excessive rotation with every single stride. So this is where you could start feeling like the hip flexors are tightening up or they're creating a compensating pattern. Your glutes may not be working. The form itself might be deteriorating, and then you might also notice like the pain. So, pain going into the hips or the legs. Now, from a statistic standpoint, studies have showed that 30 to 70% of runners experience low back pain annually. So, and with a weak core strength being the primary contributor. So, just strengthening your core, and that doesn't mean go running out and doing, planks everywhere. There are other core exercises that you could do to really help here, which again, if you want some more information on that, please let me know in the comments down below, and I'll direct you to other various videos I have right here on the channel to kind of help you guys through that a little bit more. Now, the other one, which I think kind of becomes a little bit more common, or there could be a more commonality being seen why you would want to strengthen your upper body, is if you're somebody who does experience shoulder neck tension when running or post running. So, this really is because you've got poor posture. So, the posture becomes really poor. Your body, your upper body is just now weak, which is allowing the shoulders to kind of go forward, and then the shoulders are elevating up. So that shrugging effect, which is creating that tension in the shoulders and limiting the mobility in the actual shoulder complex. So in that shoulder girdle and in that glenohumeral joint. Now, this could also be one of those things where you're just noticing also too maybe some headaches, some trigger points up in the back of the neck in the suboccipital area. Now, the other thing is when you have this restriction, excuse me, the shoulders rolled forward, the neck tension. You also might be noticing like the breathing becomes a little bit more labored. And that's just because the scalenes, which do come here in the front part of the neck, which attach to ribs 1, 2, and 3, may be elevating that rib cage up, which is going to reduce, your effectiveness to kind of have a good breathing pattern going. And you might be feeling like the rib cage is closing in on itself. You could experience some headaches as well due to that issue there. So this would be one of those things. And if you're somebody who does do marathons, you might notice that, you know, there's a burning sensation in your shoulders during the last few miles of a race. And that's usually an indication that everything up top is really fatiguing out and your body's trying to figure out how to maintain form, but it really can't. So everything is just going to collapse forward. So that would be, our next kind of big issue would be the shoulder and neck tension. Now, IT band syndrome and hip issues. So this probably would be the bigger connection where I've noticed some of my individuals who have had IT band issues or hip issues. This we've noticed more on the gait analysis. And if you haven't gone ahead and grabbed my free gait analysis or gone ahead and done that assessment tool with me, I would highly encourage you to do that. The reason why is because here, if we're looking at how you're running and we notice, if the hip is hiking up or dropping, there's going to be a different type of stress being placed on the knee. But then what's going to happen is too, there's a connection between this and also the lat, essentially kind of how that shoulder blade is moving. Because remember, the lat does attach to the inferior part of the scapula and then comes down to the pelvis. So if my hip is being hiked up, I'm putting some stress on that side. I'm not allowing for that arm swing to really happen. And then my knee is going to start kind of caving in, creating kind of that IT band issue, that stress there, where you could be noticing like the knee pain. Now, just from what I've seen in research studies, that runners with IT band syndrome often demonstrate, a weakness with their lateral core and hip abductors, which is creating a functional chain of weakness. Okay, so this is where if we start addressing the core, the deep spinal stabilizers, the erectors, the lats, and then also too working on that mobility, flexibility to the actual hip itself, and then strengthening the muscles correctly, we're going to notice a decrease in the IT band inflammation irritation. Now, the other thing is really kind of understanding rotational instability injuries. So this really has to do with more lower leg. So when we're looking at like the person who's getting Achilles tendonitis, shin splints, plantar fasciitis, maybe they have an excessive overpronation, or they're noticing that knee caving in, that's that valgus. This is because, running involves sustainable rotational forces. So you want your torso to rotate with the arm swing, but your core needs to resist the excessive rotation. So this is why having the core, solid and understanding how the body is supposed to move through multiple planes of motion, you're going to understand why if there's a weakness here, how the hips, the knees, and the ankles can definitely compensate, creating pain and discomfort. Now, the last one really is noticing a degraduation under fatigue. And that's really just when you're starting to tap out at that, end point. So this would be somebody where they start out with great posture and then by mile 8 they're starting to kind of hunch forward. The arm swing is barely there and they're looking down at the ground. So this is where the body just starts fatiguing out during those final mileage, the final miles rather. And we want to really kind of understand that because if you're noticing a shorter stride, if you're noticing ground contact time is increasing, so there's less efficiency there. If you're also noticing your breathing's becoming labored, it's because your body's posture is actually changing. And by exercising the upper body, by doing some strength training, you should notice a difference here. So how would then strength training my upper body give me that PR? So I think that's like really the major question, especially for any of my male runners who are so focused on the PR. I think some of my female runners, more or less, they want to PR, but they're out there really to enjoy it. For the most part, I do see a different relationship there. So I'm not trying to stereotype by any means, but so how would this help me with my PR? Here's the science, okay? Running economy measures how much oxygen you consume at a given pace. So, better economy means you can run faster with the same effort and maintain pace with less fatigue. So, how your upper body strength helps, you are able to maintain better posture. So, more of the upright posture, which optimizes the breathing mechanics. You reduce the compensatory movements that waste energy. And it also allows for powerful and coordinated arm drive, which assists with that propulsion. So, researchers, or I should say, research has found that runners with a stronger core demonstrate 3 to 8% better running economy compared to those with a weaker core. And if you're somebody who's doing a marathon, that could translate to a 6 or 15 minutes off your time. So it's very substantial. And I would say one of my runners who just finished with me, not only did he do the Chicago Marathon, but also then wound up doing, very smaller runs, half marathons, and things like that. And he was just PRing effortlessly. And that was because we weren't just focusing on strength training his lower body, but really starting to do overall conditioning, where we were putting his body through multiple planes of motion. And he was really experiencing just some great overall performance enhancement, and he could start to feel these muscles engage, which was huge. If you can start feeling your core engage when you're doing an activity, your glutes or your hamstrings, that's fantastic. So we want that. So the other thing is you'll notice like that enhanced power transfer. So that is huge. So if you can notice that every time the foot strikes the ground, you generate force, and then you can channel that force into pushing your body forward for a longer period of time, then you'll also understand how having a strong, stable core can be the conduit for that power. And this is something that, martial arts expert Bruce Lee noticed as a smaller individual. If he was able to channel that power into his core, his extremities could deliver and execute the power out. And that's kind of the same principle here. If you can go ahead and start to understand how to engage the core a little bit more, you'll notice better arm swing. You're going to notice that the contact time is going to be better with the feet striking the ground. There's just going to be a whole bunch of efficiency that's going to happen. And that's why, you could look at the other example of trying to push a car. If you're trying to push the car and your core is weak, your back is rounded, and you're doing most of the power with the legs, you're not going to go very far. But if you start to kind of actually harness and put the power into the core and then really execute the power out and let it be transferred out to the legs, you're going to have more power and you're going to have more success moving that vehicle. The other big thing here is you're going to notice that you're going to sustain form even when you're starting to get a little tired. So this is more of a late race advantage. So races are often won and lost in the final miles. And I think if you've done a couple of races, you will know that you've felt this at some point. And that's, given the fact that there are no other outside variables affecting, like temperature, rain, or just maybe not getting enough sleep or getting a cold. So, this is where your ability to maintain form when fatigued separates good performances from great ones. So, if you have a strong upper body, your posture's going to stay more upright. You're going to have a better arm swing, which is going to create that, more coordination. The hip extension is going to be maintained, so you're not going to be shuffling your feet, and your breathing is going to be more effective, which is everything that we really want. And if you are able to do this and you're maintaining form for just the last, 10K of a marathon, you could save about 2 to 5 minutes compared, to when you have significant form breakdown. So again, these little changes could be drastically huge for you. Now, the other thing is the breathing mechanics. So this is one of those things I mentioned early on, where if you don't have if you start letting certain muscles, feel fatigue or they're not engaging correctly, this is where you could feel that rib cage. And this is the intercostals, the serratus anterior, the core muscles, everything just feeling more compressed. And you're noticing, that your breathing rate is increasing and that you're just fatiguing out for quicker than you should be. So this is where we want to really allow for having upper body strength and allowing for that chest to be more open, so this way you can feel like you're breathing better, having full chest expansion. And it will also keep that heart rate a little lower. So when we talk about VO2, this is one of those things where if you're working the upper body, we can start to kind of get our VO2 max to be more maintained, and you'll notice, delayed fatigue. So some studies have suggested that improved postural control can increase VO2 max utilization by 2 to 4%, which is a significant advantage for racing. And if you have specific questions about what could you do to kind of open up that rib cage, I'm a big component of using the TRX because it allows you to do resistance stretching, which can really and harness and opening up that chest wall, getting in under that scapula, that shoulder blade, allowing for more core engagement, lat engagement, which I know a lot of my athletes have taken full advantage of utilizing to really help them succeed. Now, the arm swing effect. So your arms aren't just counterbalancing, they're actively contributing to the momentum and the rhythm. That is huge. Okay. So if you were to, go out and do 100 meters with your arms tied behind your back and then 100 meters with your normal arm swing, you're going to feel the difference because you're going to notice speed and effort, is going to be dramatically changed here. So this is where having these biomechanical benefits, you're going to notice that it's going to push your body forward more, and it will also assist with the recovery phase of your stride, which is really, really important. Now, the other big thing too is the mental component. I think a lot of us sometimes, we get nervous, coming up to a race. We don't know if we're ready, prepared. But if we haven't just been training our lower body, or we haven't just been doing a ton of mileage, we're now starting to kind of train our body more in that functional stance, then we're going to feel more confident when we start at that start line. And of course, when we win, when we cross the finish line, because crossing the finish line is winning, we just feel overly excited because we are like, wow, we really did prepare well. Now, there are some exercises we could focus on here. And if you want some more specific exercises, do let me know down in the comments because we can definitely take a look at that. But some core ones to focus on wouldn't just be the planks, but it would also be to focus on the ones that are going to really work the core. And I have some great videos right here on the channel. So do go ahead and check out the core exercises, which is like a 10-minute video. And then there's an advanced one as well. In terms of upper body, we definitely want to hit, some of the back muscles. So that's doing your rows, that's doing some Supermans, opposites, cobras, that's doing lat pull downs, push downs, right there. For shoulders, we don't want to go crazy with the shoulders, but obviously incorporating overhead press, but also too starting to just work the rhomboids a little bit more. So reverse flies would be excellent as well. The other thing you do want to kind of start considering is doing more what we call functional exercises. So, utilizing things like TRX, BOSU, kettlebells are really great because they will put your body through multiple planes of motion, which will allow you to really kind of not just feel the power engagement in the core, but also start to work the shoulders, the glutes, the hamstrings, the quads. I mean, everything. So, things like doing like Turkish get ups or farmer's carries would be really helpful as well. Now, again, if you have specific questions regarding which exercises you should do, please let me know. I am here to really help you. I want to see you succeed. So, again, however that needs to be, we can try to make that happen. So, I want to leave you guys with just a few kind of final thoughts. Running faster isn't about running more miles or doing more speed work. It's about becoming more of a complete athlete. When your upper body is just not along for the ride, it is an essential part of your running machine. When you strengthen your core, back, and shoulders, you're not just preventing injuries, you're unlocking performance potential that's been there all along, just waiting for stability and power to express itself. Remember, every elite runner in the world does strength training. They just don't do it to prevent injuries, they do it because it makes them faster. You can access these same benefits. And I appreciate you for joining in today, for catching this live. And if you're catching the replay, please let me know. And again, take full advantage of my free gait analysis. It's here for you guys. So go ahead, take advantage of it, and I'll catch you on the other side.